Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We have game 5 of the Stanley Cup final to discuss. Little pre-show here just because just to sort of explore how small our world is, especially with apps on our phones providing information to companies. If you look at a website, all of a sudden you're inundated with ads. There's a particular a tea company that I like. It's called Kuzmi. It's based out of Paris, France. I think it's a Russian tea. But they specialize. Most of the teas are named after like Russian royal family names like Anastasia or Prince Vladimir, whatever. It's good tea. I like it. I used to buy it at like the gourmet place around here, and all of a sudden they weren't carrying it anymore. So I just did a search on Google. Kuzmi tea. You can order it online.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden on Facebook, on Instagram, all of a sudden ads for Kuzmi tea are popping up in the timeline on Facebook, in the timeline on Instagram. It's like, my God, you can't even look at one damn thing and they're bombarding you with bull crap.
Yeah, it's the truth. It's the truth. No matter what site you go to, almost immediately anymore, if you go or show any interest or clicking on anything, it's like the ad stream immediately goes, oh, he's going here. And this was like this a few years ago, and then I thought it kind of tapered back. But I think after what happened with FCC, I think it's back in force. And all of our information's out there. I mean, I hate to use the phrase, we live in a Black Mirror world, but that's basically we're already on that. We're in that way, and we're going in that direction. We're already there, probably, in reality.
I think lots are confused by you, Mike. I mean, you like fancy Russian tea, and then you drink Tang. Like, it makes no sense.
He's got yin and yang. He's got to feed both sides,
You like fancy Russian tea, but you drink Tang.
But that's like, I am a contradiction in terms, Russ. I'm a big Sarah McLachlan fan. I'm a conservative. So it's like, things are screwy in my world. Also, I have to bring up a baseball thing. Never assume that the news, that comes out in terms of rumors is correct, because everything 2 days ago was saying Dallas Keuchel was going to sign with the Yankees, and apparently Dallas Keuchel is now signed with the Atlanta Braves, which is a little puzzling because the reports were he wanted to sign with the Yankees, but he apparently wanted a multi-year deal from the Yankees. The Yankees were only going to go 1 year, and the Braves were offering him more money. So he went to the Braves.
Oh, ding, ding, ding. That's your answer. All of a sudden, the Yankees have gotten cheap. They really have. I mean, they were a big budget team, but they have a budget now. The Yankees have a line in the sand that Yankee fans don't like because they never had it before, and it's there, and it showed, and you just lost out.
It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. As long as they're still churning and winning right now, and they're well-struck.
They just lost 3 out of 4, so we'll see.
Okay.
But I'll tell you something right now. This opens up because, again, they'll be moving out talent and salary for other players before the July 31st deadline. Scherzer, Bumgarner, Marcus Stroman, which would be hilarious because it'd be another ex-Blue Jay on the or Aaron Sanchez. They will trade for one of those guys because they've got a boatload of prospects in the minor leagues, and they have an endless supply of money, but they do have a budget. I get that.
That's another reason, just as a side note for me, just in terms of everybody in Philadelphia losing their minds over them not getting Kimbrel. I'm like, we're going to sign him for 3 years. That wasn't going to happen in Philly. I just never thought that was just too much for a guy who, again, watching him in the playoffs last year, he looked like he was falling off of a cliff. So, right. And I'd rather have that flexibility, at least from Philadelphia's perspective, even with Keuchel.
Yeah,
I saw him in Houston, and I saw velocity drop off last year in games with Houston. So I think it's smart, Mike. I think it's probably best off that you just kind of wait and see what's available at the deadline, and sometimes it's better to do that.
I do want to answer to the Phillies thing, too, because I think Phillies fans made a jump or a leap that wasn't there, because the Phillies said, hey, we're going to spend stupid money before they picked up anybody. But they made significant pickups in the offseason, and then they spent probably over what they wanted to spend for Bryce Harper. They weren't really going to spend anything else until the deadline, like you said.
The market has to also bear in terms of, Philadelphia, it's one of the biggest markets in the country. That being said, stupid money, always had that feeling of like, yeah, within this window, and then we'll see as we go forward. So
okay, can we move on to a sport that matters? Like baseball doesn't matter until late August. Okay, you have a little blip of interest when there's a home run derby. Now we can go on to like there's all this great stuff going on. You guys want to talk?
It's CFL Buzz here on CFL.com.
Hey, we've got, you know what?
But blame Mike. He started. He steers the ship. So you have to. If he gets us going, you blame him. He's the captain.
I'm blaming you all. By the way, Winnipeg is getting an NFL preseason game. We have the Raiders playing, and there's total outcry about ticket prices, and it's like
it'll probably snow that day. Whatever, man.
It's great.
Russ,
what is the? What
have you been told today?
What is the official cheese of Winnipeg? They won't be using the cheddar cheese heads. It'll be like Limburger, and everybody will stink. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, June 7th, 2019.
I'm Anthony Mingione from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
I'm Peter Tessier in stupid, muggy, humid Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I'm happy. I'm fine.
And I'm Captain Michael Agello and in balmy Buffalo, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's get started talking about Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final, and we'll push off the controversy because I want to actually talk about the game and then talk about the controversy. A 2-1 victory for the Blues. They take a 3-2 lead in the series. They have a chance to go back for Game 6 in St. Louis, which Russ is going to be going to. How are you getting there, Russ? Are you driving all the way?
I'm driving. I'm going to use Columbus as the halfway point tomorrow and then drive in Sunday.
Okay. So you're going to that game, which the Cup will be in the building. Yep. I have to say the Blues, I think, finally learned their lesson and from the first 4 games. The games that they were proactive and physical, they won. The games that they sat back, they lost. And Game 5, I think they were proactive and very physical, and it resulted in the victory. Now, obviously, they got other things there were other things that happened, but in general, Anthony, I'll start with you. Mm-hmm. I think that was the reason why they won. They did not back down from what they did in Game 4, and they realized that was the recipe for success.
Exactly, and I think in some ways, that's, as you stated, that's exactly really what we saw out of the Blues in the games that they lost. You saw guys, especially like Peter Angelo, backing up in the zone in Game 3. They just looked like they allowed Boston's speed to overwhelm them.
Right.
And they decided in Game 4 that wasn't going to happen. And it's been interesting to watch them because they get out to that 2-0 lead in Game 1, but then they looked completely overwhelmed after that. After the initial lead in the first game of the series, it's like they've had to get their sea legs to kind of get the bearing. And they've been fortunate enough that Boston, for some reason, has also let off the gas pedal at times. And the minute that Dawson's done that, I think the Blues have taken advantage of it. And it's another case, I think, of the Blues' physical game is wearing the Bruins down now. The Bruins, I think, are seeing more and more of a physical toll. Their blue line is now thinned out, and that's a big concern, I think, going forward. Plus, you get back Vince Dunn, and he's a contributor as well. And once you add that to the mix, all of a sudden the Blues defense has a lot of depth to it. They can rotate all 4 lines pretty successfully. And again, I felt they had control for the majority, despite that initial shot total in the first period. If you're watching the real flow of that game, it was an even period, I thought, despite the fact that they weren't able really to get through enough shots. And then I thought they really began to take off in the second period and onward. And
Peter, I think the criticism of the Blues in this series has been they've lost the special teams battle by a dramatic amount. And when Boston is scoring over 30% on the power play in this series, I mean, that's decisive. But yesterday, I think it was 11-2, the shots were on goal. And but they killed off the penalty. They kept it even until they got the O'Reilly goal. And I think their special teams in the last couple games have played much better.
Yeah, I mean, when St. Louis adheres to their game, as Anthony sort of pointed out, they they don't do a lot of things wrong. And right now, Bennington basically, for most of the game, sees the puck the size of a grapefruit, which helps a lot too. And all of a sudden, when he's seeing it like that, they're building confidence and they execute so well. Again, we've said this before. We've been saying it since the St. Louis Winnipeg series. Whatever Berube has put into their heads and whatever he's working with, they believe it and feel it because they don't really screw it up. And when you watch, like, I didn't watch the first half of the game. I watched sort of the last half. And one of the things I noticed is when Boston was pressing after they got the one goal, St. Louis didn't panic.
No,
they just kept doing what they've done so well. Simple, smart plays, making the Bruins work for every piece of ice they got. And then Bennington did his job. And it was almost machine-like.
Yeah, and Ross, I thought Bennington was phenomenal yesterday, but I have to say, because not that we've been critical of Berube, but the move of Zach Sanford up to that line really has been. Everybody's saying Cassidy, he adjusts well in game and things of that nature, but honestly, when they moved Sanford to that number 2 line with O'Reilly and Perron, moved Sammy Blas down. It created something. You've got jam on all 4 of those lines. I think it really affected.
It's they're very balanced units. That's it to look at there.
Yeah, no question. I was critical of Berube until that move. That move has helped in a million different ways. But Blas is not really that good of an assist guy. Anyhow, he does get to the net once in a while. I didn't know Sanford can do like between the legs passing. Let's be real. I don't think anybody knew about that. So this has just turned into magic for them. I mean, I've been supporting Bennington this whole time. I always tell people I get all these remarks sent my way when Bennington gives up a goal that people don't like, but he has gotten better in this series. He on the post, he was nearly impossible to even move the puck on. He was so strong with his legs. I also looked at what Chara was doing. He had 16 minutes. What Anthony said with the weeding out of the blue line is true. Now that Chara is a under 20-minute guy and somewhat effective, you've got 25 minutes for Krug, 24 for McAvoy. They're not going to survive that way. Krug was getting the you-know-what knocked out of him. Now, good on him for keep coming back, but that is going to take a toll. Certainly, it's taken a toll on St. Louis because you guys have told me that Barbashev's out, and Barbashev has been a really
it's not official. He has his hearing, but we all know if he's getting if he's got a hearing,
so he's probably going to
he's likely out.
Yeah, and then that's going to hurt him. There's no question, but they have some depth there. There's other guys they can bring in. I think because he's a 4th liner, it means something because the Bruins 4th line's good, but they'll figure it out. I'm not that worried about it. What is really interesting here is, for all the talk again, Marcus Johansson. Yes, he did well early on. He hasn't done anything lately. He's getting chances, but this is what he did in a lot of his Washington career too. Skates well, passes well, gets a lot of chances, not a lot of finishing plays or finishing on his own. That has hurt him a little bit. It kept Nordstrom in the lineup. That's one where I know that people were critical early on, and then he got some points. Then he stopped getting points. Even Pasternak was getting worn down in that game, starting to miss the net. Like, this is something where Bruins fans, I get it. If you want to complain about the Acciari penalty, fine. But you are getting beat up the last 2 games. Plain and simple. And just like the 86 Red Sox, you still have – there's more games to play. Like, they had one more game to play. If they'd have won, they still could have won the World Series. And you have 2 games to win. You could still win this. Everybody's acting all defeated because, there's a bad call. Like, come on.
And they were up 3-0 in Game 7, and they still lost the Red Sox 86.
Yeah. But hold on. Howard Johnson told me, and this is very important, from a mind game standpoint, even up 3-0, he said everybody in that dugout knew they were going to win because they knew they had their number. And I don't know that the Blues have the Bruins number, but I got to tell you, they might by the second period of that game if they keep playing this way.
Anthony, psychologically, I don't know whether it's good for the Bruins to have that excuse that we got screwed because they didn't call a slew foot on Tyler Bozak. I don't know
what they have to do, the Bruins, is they have to you have to be careful with sort of the emotions of that psychologically, as you said, because it can be a case of, you can use it as motivation, but it's got to be done just right by Cassidy and by that leadership staff. They really have to be careful with that, because you don't want to lean back on that as a crutch and feel, that you're entitled for a makeup call and then you don't get it.
Right.
Then you don't get it in game 6, and then you're expecting that call to happen, because the pattern has been that way. The refs at this point, especially after the criticism of what happened, they're going to have to be as absolutely on point as possible here in the clinching game. Now, will we get that? That's obviously a subject for much debate.
And we have 2 days to debate the lineup changes for game 6. But Peter, to me, it looks like, I think that since Chara played as many minutes as he did, I think they'll go back to 6 defensemen. I think they'll sit Camper, although that's a little risky, especially on the road. I think they'll probably want to get Backus in there, because Backus represents pushback. He can put it out as much as he can give it. So in terms of hitting, so I think that they may go that way. And for St. Louis, if Barbashev gets suspended, they can go back to Fabry, or they can go back to Robert Thomas if he is healthy enough.
To quote a famous former NHL goalie, I predict that St. Louis will come out like gorillas out of a cage when at home, and Boston will need to be prepared for an onslaught of emotion, physicality, and pace that they haven't seen this series. This is the moment that St. Louis has been waiting for forever, and they play disciplined, they play hard, and they play physical. They're going to dial it up.
If they do that. Otherwise, again, we've seen history in this series already. Now it's how much they've learned as the series has gone on.
The only thing,
the last time that they had a game, game 3, they let that emotion get the better of them. And the Bruins are master. They've been here. Many of the veterans on this team have been in this spot before, where they could use that energy against St. Louis, and all of a sudden, an arena that's going berserk, you'll hear a pin drop in if they're up 2-0.
And I'm not.
That's the thing that St. Louis had. It's the mind game as much as anything for St. Louis.
That's a good point. I just expect that Boston's going to need to bring, to Mike's point about bringing in Backus, is they're going to need someone there who can push back, not to get into a power battle, but ensure that they don't get pushed behind a little bit. And if Berube and the team manages their emotions, they just have to play a forward pushing game. That's all they have to do, manage their emotions, and they're going to have a lot of them. And they can hold Boston if they don't get any pushback. And Backus is the best option to give that back.
Yeah.
One more little subject that people have been bringing up to me, mostly in a complaining way, but I think we should broach it.
People complain to you, Russ?
Yes.
The other way around? No.
About a host of things. But for this one, everybody thinks now in Boston land that Craig Berube has gotten some sort of advantage with the refs because he whined about it. I really don't think that's the case. What I think the case is that Bruins fans never seem to notice when their guys do something dirty and it goes unnoticed and they don't get a call. And I think when they see it happening to them, they don't like it.
How about Jake DeBrusk on Nazem Kadri in game 2 before Kadri went banana hammock? And how about Zdeno Chara punching Tavares in the jaw at the end of the second period? They get away with bloody murder. Just three little.
Well, let's see if the other two guys have an opinion too.
Okay.
Look, it's warfare out there. And, I think part of the problem when you bring the Bruins into things is that they've sort of got a laundry list of stuff, and then they created their own marketing campaign of, don't poke the bear. And so they've created this insight that they can do heavy-handed stuff and no one else can, and that's why everyone hates them. But at the end of the day, they dish it out as well as, but they also take it. And one way or another, what we've seen with officiating in any series this year has just got everyone concerned. Don't pick on Boston, but don't say they're innocent either.
Right. Three little things, then we'll move on. One, I messaged Kevin Allen when he posted the photo of the lobster that they were selling that they were giving to the media for the pregame meal. $8 for a whole lobster. My one word: jealousy. He's like, I'm sorry.
I saw Mike Zeisberger's picture. I'm like, someone's enjoying himself.
Oh, right yeah, I would be too. What the hell? That and the most precious gift that I have ever made in my life was the 3 seconds that Cam Neely was firing that bottle of Aquafina against.
It was fantastic. That form was beautiful. I was like. Matt Klentak needs to get on the phone. We need Seabass in the bullpen in Philly.
I think if we had video of Laviolette with the jelly against the wall, we could do a split screen on that. That would be nice.
Yeah, if it was a jelly donut, we'd be talking about Don Kaharski.
What is National Donut Day, Mike? That's good that you brought that up.
There you go. And the third thing, from the sublime to the ridiculous, Barstool Sports recording the video of Bruce.
It wasn't
Barstool.
They, as usual, Barstool appropriating stuff without probable. Who knows?
But thank you, Anthony. That's exactly it.
Ben Hoffman, I think from St. Louis had it first. He said someone from the stands had sent it to him.
Yeah, and
from the dispatch,
it wasn't Bruins fans fighting with Blues fans. They
were fighting themselves. I mean,
violence.
I mean, you got to admit, Bruin on Bruin fan violence when they're losing, it kind of warms your heart.
I think that's the reason why everybody was posting it, because everybody was just looking at it and going, it emphasizes everything was falling apart.
I had an exchange on Twitter with Yoni Niemanen, who's I think he's a reporter, but
he is a reporter.
Yeah, and he's a good guy. But I said, you think that this is a tea party compared to what I used to watch in Buffalo Toronto games at the Odd? There was somebody that almost got thrown off the upper deck during one of those brawls. I'm sure.
I was at a Subway Series game. Same thing happened with Mets and Yankees fans. But this is something where Barstool wants to sort of push this out, and like Anthony said, as their own. And it's just like, I don't get them. It's like they are
I completely get. Come on.
You want to be the troll. You want to be the troll.
I'm not going to put this on a thing on Barstool. I've made my points with them.
There's so many good things about Boston, and they're the worst example of Boston. That's the problem.
I agree. All right. Now, one thing that we're going to notice is if game 6 on Sunday is the last game of the season, I believe it's 48 hours after the last game. It's very soon after that the buyout window begins. I know the buyout window for NHL teams ends on June 30th, just before unrestricted free agency. So you're going to have about 2 weeks to maybe a little longer where the buyouts are going to begin. And I know that the Athletic had an article regarding the likely buyouts of players. And I think this is something we can just sort of hash around here in terms of where we think some teams are going, because based on their cap situations. Now we know that injured players can't be bought out. So a guy like Ryan Kessler in Anaheim will not be bought out, but he might be done for his career. So first of all, the thing is, I'm wondering whether a guy like Kessler is going to be a sort of a trade candidate for a team that wants to occupy cap space. He's covered under insurance, and he's not going to play. So he would, for a team up against the cap, he would go on LTIR and open up space. And for a team that's not close to the cap, a budget team like an Arizona or somebody like that, or New Jersey, for example, they could trade for him and he occupies cap space and they get reimbursed for the money. So that's one thing. But we'll talk about the buyouts in a second. But do you think that there is going to be more of those like Pavel Datsyuk, David Clarkson type of deals where the guys who are on LTIR are going to get moved?
I mean, I think there'll be there's one every year, but I don't think that'll be the one. I think they're going to wait on him a bit. They'll LTIR him, but I don't think they're just going to quickly do that in hopes that maybe next year they get him. So I think with Kessler, they won't do it.
But do you think it'll be possible with other teams?
I do think it's possible with other teams. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That makes sense.
Okay. Let's just go. We'll talk about maybe 10 guys, and then we'll take some questions in the chat. Anthony, I know you got to leave in about 10 minutes. Yeah. But okay, I'll go over a number of guys. I'll mention their name. You tell me whether you think the team in question will buy them out or will not buy them out. This one, it was listed first, so I'll tell you right now, I think he's going to get bought out, and we've heard talk about him being bought out, and that's Scott Darling, the goaltender from Carolina. Russ, I think it's pretty much a fait accompli.
I think he's been bought out in all the minds of everybody in Carolina, so yeah.
Anthony?
I would absolutely agree with that, yes.
Peter?
Yeah, I think he'll be bought out, and he'll be signed really cheap by the Leafs for a backup.
Well, he's better than Garrett Sparks. Better than Garrett Sparks, but that's not saying much. Okay, another goaltender. This one I'm not sure about, but his fall from grace was rather sudden after being pretty good a couple years ago. That's Mike Condon from the Ottawa Senators. Now, the reason I doubt that he gets bought out is because it's the Ottawa Senators. Because I don't think they want to give away money. You know, maybe they use him as a piece in a trade in terms of you can pay for him, I won't pay for him. He's due $2.4 million next year. Start with you, Anthony. You think he's a buyout, or you think he'll either get traded or stay?
That's a tough one. That one, I'm probably gonna lean towards you and say that he doesn't get bought out, but I can't say it's out of the realm of possibility.
Russ?
I don't think he'll get bought out.
Peter?
Goaltenders are good assets, like you said.
No.
Yeah, I mean, if they retain a little salary, they can get an asset for him. I think I know that a few years ago, Toronto bid on him to be the backup. I mean, I think there are going to be a lot of backups available on July 1st. So I think that is going to be a way that they're going to go. Okay. Number 3, Ryan Callahan, Tampa Bay. I personally think, and my prediction is, he's not going to get bought out. He's going to get traded, but that might be tough because his cap hit is $5.8 million for next year. So, Russ, you first, since he's an ex-Ranger.
No, I think he'll get bought out. I don't think the Rangers will want any part of it. So I expect him to get bought out. I think without Yzerman there now, I think they're going to move on.
Peter?
This is a tough one. Like, Tampa's got so many issues here, right? Like, I don't know. I'm kind of split on this. Like, they could, but I think they're going to try and trade first.
Okay. Yeah, I think Detroit could be a possibility because Yzerman knows that organization. Yeah, he knows that organization very well. You're telling me that Julian Brisebois won't, to get $5.8 million off of his books, he won't trade a Boris Kachuk or, I mean, maybe not Radish or Foot, but a Volkov or somebody like that.
You're about to take the full hit off in that circumstance, not for a partial, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I can see that I think that route is possible. It's going to cause them to bite their lip a little bit, but I think if they want to get out from under that, I think that would be the route to go. Beyond that, if they can't get that done, then I think it could be a buyout then.
Okay, Peter, you on this one, you go first. Dmitry Kulikov, 1 year left at $4.33 million. I know that he was out for a while during the year. I know he played at the end of the year. With the Jets cap situation, what do you think is going to happen there?
I think he will be. I think he'll be traded and maybe with some salary retained. I think there's probably a team that could use him as a depth guy, but not at $4 million, but at $2 million.
Or somebody trades salary back to them, but that doesn't do them any good. They don't do any good. They don't want salary back.
But getting $2 million, getting 2.1 or whatever it is, I think he's at 4.3. Yep. Getting 2.1 in cap savings for 1 year might be totally fine for the Jets.
Russ?
Yeah, I can see that. I agree with Peter, actually.
So you're saying buyout, or you're saying
not buyout, trade.
You're saying trade. You're saying that they'll eat some. Okay, Anthony.
I won't get bought out.
Okay. I'll start with you on this one because it's in your neck of the woods. Andrew McDonald, $5 million left on the last year of his deal. In my mind, it makes sense to buy him out because they have so much cap space and they want to allocate.
Enough, and at this point, there's a lot of depth in system now. we're also further along where you can't with the Flyers defense, you can't lay back any longer on the veteran stabilizer argument with him at all. His play definitely dropped off. He had 2 years ago, I thought, better was better relative, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
But now you've got Ivan Provorov, who's got quite a few years in. Shane Gostisbehere, as they're no longer kids anymore. They've been through things now. Plus, you got to have space, obviously, to make sure Phil Myers has his opportunities here. There's just not a lot of opportunity left anymore. So, I think it's I think it's a decent chance here that he gets bought out.
Russ,
buyout.
Peter,
buyout.
Okay, I'll pause the list for a second because I want to ask you this, Anthony. I know I was listening to the 31 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman a couple days ago, and he did mention the possibility of the Flyers shopping Nolan Patrick. Now that was in the wake of the trade for Kevin Hayes,
right,
for his negotiating rights, and if they do sign him, then you would be moving Patrick down to the third line center, which to me would make sense because
exactly tactically, if you're trying to have him develop, I think it makes especially when he's still being on this rookie deal, it makes plenty of sense for him to be looking for advantageous matchups, and you need center depth, which is the one thing where I saw this. There has to be, and again, if Elliot's not, we all know Elliot's not going to float something out there unless there's definite smoke with this. So whether or not it's a case of my read on it is it a way of
motivation?
Is it say, hey, we had, we need more out of you coming into this season. And I just, after the but again, it was at the end of the day, Patrick is a Hextall pick. But again, when you're number 2, everybody knew he was, one of the first 2 players, talent level wise, that was available in that draft. Although, there has been some talk that, there was maybe some more debate with the Flyers about that pick than we know for sure. Again, maybe there was another player that they were interested in that spot, but Patrick won out in that circumstance. So, again, I don't know for sure here, but they need more out of him. And if it's getting advantageous and using an advantageous matchup, having him on the third line to help him develop his offensive game, that's one thing. But I can't say necessarily it would be out of the realm of possibility if they got a really good trade offer that can help them now, that they wouldn't at least consider it. You have to keep that open.
Peter, I can't help but putting 2 and 2 together, and maybe I'm way off base, but we know Patrick is from Winnipeg.
Yeah.
We know that they're in
possibility,
Yeah, we know that there's been one of the teams that the Trouba talk has been attached to is Philadelphia. So that intrigues me in terms of maybe a larger deal, but that would be a piece under control, low salary, high talent. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before I go into my thoughts on that, I just want to add a little hat tip to the certain unnamed website and editor-in-chief who finally caught up to what we've been talking about for close to 3 weeks on this, and was on Winnipeg radio today saying, oh yeah, this is what's going on, as if it was breaking news. Bravo. Yeah, thanks for coming out and Leach. Anyways, as it goes for Patrick, he's a Winnipeg kid. He's the actual same age as my oldest son, and my son has met him, and I know people know him and stuff. The thing on Patrick that really wasn't talked about in his draft here was that he's not the most keen to get into physical kind of play. He shied away from it. It's been a bit of a rub on what people said about him, and and jealous peers sort of say maybe a little more derogatory things about him. But the fact is that's sort of the thing about him. And I don't know if he's the kind of guy the Jets want to bring in the hopes that they can do. I don't want to call him a reclamation project because he's certainly not that. But if he's a piece, does he sort of come in their set with a little more controllability on salary and stuff, and they can work with him a little longer? And there's some aspects to there. I don't know. It'd be very curious to see. But if I'm the Flyers, I don't think I'm throwing Nolan Patrick's name out in anything until I know what Kevin Hayes is doing.
Right.
Like Nolan Patrick may not be ready for 2C minutes and roll,
right?
But it doesn't mean he won't be there in 3 or 4 years.
And that's the key. Now, again,
right?
it does come down to, again, with the negotiations with Hayes,
right?
What kind of salary are we talking about? What kind of term are we talking about where you're going to be committed for that many years? And then what happens, if Patrick takes off and he's your second line center, and then Hayes, that's an expensive proposition. So that's the other thing that I think has to be taken into account with the negotiations with Hayes,
Russ,
and what would vis-a-vis Patrick.
The funny thing is that before Hayes was traded to the Jets from the Rangers, the talk about, the ballpark of what he was looking for from the Rangers was 5.5. And now all of a sudden him going to free agency potentially, or getting what would be equivalent of him in free agency from the Flyers, is 6 to 6.5. That's been the general consensus. I don't honestly. I think he's a good player. I think he's a useful player. I don't know. Again, I don't know whether he's worth that kind of money.
Well, he's worth it to them because it definitely solves their problem, and it's not that high of a cost problem. Like, it's just going to get worse for centers. So I think it solves their problem. I think the other thing is, if they really think they could sign Hayes, which I have to believe they do, then could I see Patrick and like Gostisbehere going to Minnesota for Spurgeon and Rask? Yeah, I probably could. I think something like that could happen.
I don't know if Philly wants. Again, Rask has been notorious. I think I got to check.
They might have a choice. Like, that's the guy that gets thrown in, and you either use him or you use somebody else.
That's just he fell off a cliff this year.
I know. But that's the price you have to pay to get Spurgeon, right? And it saved Minnesota money.
Maybe it's
if you don't have to shed your first. If you don't have to shed your first round, your number 11th pick, versus that would be something that might be.
And the other thing on Patrick that I want to mention, second half of the year, he did show a little more physicality. He did.
He did. And that's the reason why I'd be hesitant to make that. Why I had to think really long and hard before I have Nolan Patrick out there in trade talk.
Yeah, Anthony, I think you're bang on, because the one thing in all these scenarios we haven't talked about is that 11th pick, and that's currency too. And you know what? If I'm the Flyers, there's got to be a pretty significant deal with players and stuff, and it's got to balance well with salary before I even throw that in.
Well, I have
now, because the Flyers, in all intents and purposes, had a bizarre year. They should have been a playoff team.
Yeah. They
should, and they weren't. So they're sort of blessed. They're cursed and blessed. You're cursed that you didn't do it, but you're blessed with basically a top 10 pick.
I have
right, and that's serious currency for them when it comes to what they can do, and you've got to use it wisely.
I have the feeling that, and obviously it's going to be on the back burner now since the Flyers got Hayes, and until there's a resolution, either they sign or they're not going to sign, they'll probably any trades of centers to the Flyers or rumors of such will take the back burner. But I have a feeling that if all of a sudden they shift from Hayes to Nazem Kadri, which had been rumored, the number 11 pick is going to be part of that, because the Leafs don't have a first. And I know that Dubas in Buffalo at the Combine last Thursday hinted that, we could move up into the first round. Now, he wasn't saying we're definitely going to do it, but I have a feeling if there's an opportunity to move up into the first round as part of a deal, and I think it would be more than just the number 11 pick, but, if it's Sanheim and the number 11, I think the Leafs would do something like that.
Philly's not. Philadelphia's not going to move up.
Yeah.
They're
not a fireable offense right there.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, I would have serious concerns there about really.
Whoa. Yeah, and they'd have to throw in Kapanen.
That's pie in the sky, Michael. Sorry.
Kadri and Kapanen for 11th.
My thank you. All right, let's get back to the buyouts. And Anthony, all
right, gentlemen, have a good one.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, see Anthony.
Yeah, this is the group that's going to be partying together in Vancouver in a few weeks. Okay, we'll do 4 or 5 more buyout guys, and we'll do some more next week, and then we'll take some questions in the chat. So start putting them in there. Number 6, Vladimir Sobotka. I can say right now, yes, sir. Although this is the one thing, the Buffalo Sabres, for some ungodly reason, do not like buyouts. I don't know if it's Terry Pagula, if it's his, that's his edict. They didn't buy out Matt Molson. They buried Matt Molson in California in the AHL. Not even for their own AHL team. They sent him, I think it was to Ontario or something like that, in the AHL. But he was $5.5 million on the last year of his contract, but the money was lower, and the buyout would have spread over 2 years. But they have tons of cap space, and still they didn't buy him out. So I would think that they're going to buy out Sobotka, but with Kruger coming in, maybe he wants to take another look at the guy. But what do you think, Russ? Buyout or no?
I'm gonna go buyout. I can see him going to some other league, not being in the NHL anymore.
Well, if he goes to the KHL, they don't have to buy him out. He just walks away from the deal.
Well, but he could take a buyout and go there mid-season or something, can't he?
Well, if he takes a buyout, the KHL season doesn't start until August, so he could take a buyout and then sign with the KHL.
Right, that's what I think he would do.
Okay, Peter.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know him intimately in terms of understanding it, but I agree with the logic you guys just said.
Yeah. Brandon Dubinsky, 2 years left at 5.85. One problem with this: Columbus has got boatloads of cap space, especially with Panarin and Bobrovsky leaving. That's I believe it's like $15-16 million. So they're loaded. I mean, I know that they're going to have to sign Werenski to an extension. Dubois is eligible to sign an extension. That's going to eat up space. They're probably going to bring in, try to sign Duchesne, but Dubinsky actually played pretty decent in the playoffs. I don't know whether that's going to happen. It would be almost $2 million on the cap for 4 years if they buy him out with 2 years left at 5.85. Russ, yes or no?
I mean, yeah, they're not buying him out. Torts still wants to play a guy like that, and I don't blame him. Torts doesn't care about what the salary is or the salary cap is. Not playing him and buying him out would be the same as Torts not playing Stu Bickle anymore if he still had him. So, no, he's going to continue to play him.
Yeah, I think so too. I just think, your savings there is around $4 million total, but you're taking on an extra $2 million for 2 more years, and I don't think it's as drastic a situation to go that route as some might think it is.
And I'll also go one further. I think what would complicate this is I think they're going to trade Sonny Milano at the draft. So that's I've been hearing murmurs about that. So if that happens, you want to hold on to a Dubinsky. You can't just start getting rid of everybody.
This one I'd be I would question, but I can understand why, because he had such a terrible year. And that's Valerie Nikushkin of the Dallas Stars. Now he makes almost $3 million. He scored no goals, and I believe he had no penalty minutes, which is the weird. It's absolutely weird, because when this guy was a rookie, he looked like he was going to be a power forward that would score 30 goals. He goes to the KHL. He comes back. He's a shadow of his former self. Now, the interesting thing is, since he's under 26 years old, it's like the Cody Hodgson buyout, where they only have to, it's 1/3 instead of 2/3 of the salary. So the cap hit for the Stars, if they bought him out, would be $700,000 for next year and $450,000 the year after that. So they basically wiped the slate clean. But Russ, I know he had a terrible year. Maybe he's going to go back to the KHL, but I have a feeling that some NHL team is going to say, boy, this is willing. I'd be willing to roll the dice on this guy because there's such talent still there.
Yeah, he's low cost, and he's still a big guy who's 24. Somebody will take a chance on him. He's not getting bought out.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's there's still potential there.
How about Brandon Manning for Valerie Nikushkin, and then you put him on the left wing or on the wing with either McDavid or Draisaitl, and see if he can score some goals.
Sure.
Okay, a couple more. Michael Stone, Calgary. Now this is interesting because they were using the presence of Michael Stone to attract Mark Stone there.
Yeah.
And that didn't work. And now all of a sudden, now he's a buyout candidate. But 1 year left at $3.5 million. Now you look at Calgary, Russ, and they have young defensemen coming up. Shillington, Valimaki played significant minutes. There's another Swedish defenseman that played a lot of minutes for them, as well as Brody and Hamonic and so they Hannafin and Giordano. So they're loaded on the blue line. The rumor is that they're going to trade one of Hamonic or Brody with a year left in their contract. If they're trying to extend the other one, then they may use the money that they're saving on Stone or to sign them or sign somebody else. What do you think? Buyout or no?
No, I think he'll get traded to the Leafs for Garrett Sparks. There you go.
Yeah. I think buying out Stone is, I mean, the savings is, it's only 1.1 million and you get an extra year cap hit. I think it's a last resort. I mean, there's too much smoke around Brody and Hamonic right now to assume that they're going to get moved before you'd have to move Stone. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, moving Stone is you're probably throwing in something to move him to.
Right.
He's just not that good.
Okay, this one is complicated. Carl Alsner, 3 years left at $4.625 million. The buyout would spread over 6 years. Montreal has a lot of cap space, but clearly they soured on Alsner. His skills are slipping. He was up and down in the second half of the year after he was put on waivers. For 4 of the 6 years, the cap hit on the buyout would be a little over $1 million. Next year, it would be almost the amount of his salary, 4.2. The year after that would be $2 million. So they would spread out that the cap hit for 3 years. But I don't know where Montreal is spending that money in the next few years. But I'm sure Bergevin wants the flexibility. Russ, I could almost see them trying to trade out. Like if Alsner if the Leafs liked Alsner for 3 years, they would trade Zaitsev for 5 years, and that would probably be a benefit to them. But other than that, if they can't pull off something like that where it's crap for crap, for lack of a better term, then I think that's probably very possible they buy him out.
I don't think they're going to buy him out. I mean, I'm looking. They really don't have much of a buyout history with Bergevin. I mean, other than Scott Gomez, you can't really find one. I couldn't even find another one. I don't think they'll do it. I think he'll work some sort of trade or he'll hold on to him and he'll just be a depth guy. They have so much cap space that I think they'll just keep the body and hope that maybe he does a little better. But he's still a defenseman in this league, so I think they're going to hold on to him.
Peter?
Yeah, I agree. I just don't. It's too complicated.
I mean, the 3 year. It's. I mean, you think that Lucic for 4 years is complicated. Yeah. I mean, Alsner. I mean, they're both sort of in the same boat. Alsner has just slowed down, and I don't know whether for most teams he's anything more than a 5 or 6. And even Montreal didn't think he was a 5 or 6. So they have young defensemen in Mete and Juleson that they probably want to get in the lineup every day. So but the thing is, I mean, if you bury him down in Laval, you're only saving a little over $1 million. You're taking a $3+ million cap hit for 3 more years. Maybe you wait a year and you bury him down, and then you buy him out, and the cap hit's only 4 years instead of 6. Maybe that's what they'd end up doing. Okay, Russ, any questions in the chat?
Yeah, hold on. I was answering one online. Okay. Let's see. Somebody, Steve James goes, what about Kovalchuk? Well, what about him, Steve? Like, I don't think nobody wants him. He's not moving. Like, I think LA's stuck with him. Next question.
I'll say this. I know that Elliot Friedman brought this up, and I think I mentioned this before, and I know that some people shook their head at this. I think the Islanders, if they lose Eberle, they need a scoring winger, and we know Lou and Kovalchuk back to the New Jersey days. The Islanders
he's not a Trotz kind of guy. No way.
He's not a Trotz kind of guy, but they also need scoring, Russ, and we know that it's iffy regarding Anders Lee. I'm not saying that Kovalchuk is anywhere close to being the player he was 7 or 8 years ago, but if they can get Los Angeles to maybe eat a third of the contract,
I would rather get Mariusz Czerkawski out of retirement, Polish rifle.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
the Polish Prince.
I thought he was the Polish rifle, the Polish whatever.
That's Ron Jaworski from Lackawanna, New York. But continue.
Ron Jaworski was my boss once. Anyhow, Let's see.
And
What
Polish
else?
power was Ivan Putski.
Yes. Okay, so Drew wants to know why would the Flyers give up on a 21-year-old second pick so easily, this quickly? I mean, only if they're getting exactly what they want. Like the trade that I pointed out, the only way they would put Patrick in that deal is because A, they want to get rid of Gostisbehere, and B, they want Spurgeon so bad that they're going to have to give up this asset. Otherwise, he's not going anywhere. Odds are he's not going anywhere.
Remember, though, and this has happened with many organizations, new management does not value old management's players, their picks, as much as old management did. So, I mean, that you could go all over the board in terms of Philadelphia, where they may not value Sanheim as much. They may not value Provorov or Morgan Frost or any of Hextall's picks. They may be willing to use them as assets to get the players that they want. That's the reality of hockey and professional sports.
Yep. Jason Rohrbach has a question for Peter. I think Gostisbehere on the 11 for Trouba, conditional Trouba sign long term, seems like a fair deal. Am I that off? People tell me Gostisbehere is better than Trouba.
No, they're different.
Yes.
They're different, but man, I just think that's overpayment for Trouba.
It's not over.
It is. Like, Trouba's even signed. So what does Winnipeg get out of that? They get a lesser player in terms of the roundedness of game.
Yes.
But they get the Gostisbehere offensive upside, and they also get the 11th plus the Gostisbehere salary.
For
and Flyers have to pay more for True. Like, if that's what the market is, that's awesome for Winnipeg. I just don't know if Philly wants to do that.
I think that's a hesitation there. I do.
Yeah, I think they're going to. Then there's something coming with Trouba the other way too. Like, there's going to be something to even this up. Maybe Winnipeg's second or something like that.
All right. Funky Cold Zadina says, why was Billy Buckner playing first base? All right. Last time I'm going to go over this. John McNamara used to use him at first base because he was still a great bat. John McNamara all season long would take out Bill Buckner for defensive purposes, but wanted him in that game because they felt like that game was a slam dunk, and he wanted Buckner on the field to celebrate at the end of the game. Of course, it didn't happen that way.
And the defensive replacement was Dave Stapleton, who was a nothing offensive guy and a defensive first baseman, and the game was still relatively close too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the reason why. But okay, one or two more questions, then we can end it.
Okay, Thomas said Patrick and a first for Goudreau is the rumor. That's not a real rumor.
That's idiocy.
That's a horseshit rumor.
Yeah.
I have to say, and I'll probably write about this on the weekend, because one of the things that Elliot Friedman said about the Kadri rumors is that they're basically all one-sided, that teams are contacting the Leafs about Kadri, not the Leafs are shopping Kadri, and that Western Canada teams, specifically Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg, Edmonton, would be interested, especially teams that are playing against McDavid, because Kadri is very adept at getting under McDavid's skin.
Yeah. I'm going to give Jason this other question because this is a smart question.
Okay.
He goes, I mean, Brock Nelson just got 6 years for 36 after 50 points. Why wouldn't Hayes be looking for 6? No, he definitely is. I think Hayes is looking for 6, and we'll use that as an example. And honestly, if you match up Hayes and Brock Nelson, although they're a little different, you can make the argument Hayes is better.
I agree with that. It's just funny how, and I don't know if the Rangers were interested in obviously if they were, they would have, unless they came.
No, I think they spoke to him, Mike, before he left, before they traded him. I do believe there was a conversation that went on just to sort of see what he was looking for.
Okay.
At least that's what I heard. Steve James, last question here. Why can't Scott Lawton break the NHL? What is his potential? Well, I think he was better on the wing. It doesn't mean he still won't go back to center. It's his skating. His skating is NHL okay, but he has very good instincts. He can make some plays. He definitely has toughness. So coaches like him. He's a really good guy in the locker room. You could trade Scott Lawton, but he's probably more he's probably better for the Flyers to have him, sort of like Michael Raffle, to piece him into one of these spots based on whoever else is left. So no, I think Scott Lawton, what you saw last year, that's I think the best you'll see out of Scott Lawton, and he is really good on the penalty kill. Matt is right about that.
Well, when we're back next, we could have a Stanley Cup champion, or we could be headed to a Game 7. So, good show, guys. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For the departed Anthony Mangione.
No, he's not dead. He just had.
He just left the show. I mean, I didn't say.
No, you say it like he's dead.
For Peter Tessier and Russell Cohen.
When people are mad at me, that's generally what they call me. That's good.
I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.